Hey everybody, before we get to this week's podcast, I wanted to let you know that I've got some big news coming up, like a big announcement, actually a couple. I'm going to announce it first on my blog at theproducersperspective.com. To make sure you don't miss out on this news, go to theproducersperspective.com today and make sure you subscribe. It's in the upper right-hand box. Okay, go there now, subscribe, and now on with the podcast.
I want to be a producer with a hit show on Broadway. I want to be a producer.
Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Producer's Perspective podcast with me, Ken Davenport. Very excited to have two brand new writers to the Broadway scene this year who are nominated for just about every award this season, including the Tony. They also took home a Drama Desk Award for Best Book, and their musical won the Outer Critics Award, the Drama Desk Award. Please welcome to the podcast the creators of Come From Away, Irene Sankoff and David Hein. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much.
So all those nominations, all those kudos, of course, from Come From Away. Prior to that, they wrote the cult hit My Mother's Lesbian Jewish Wiccan Wedding. And somewhere along the way, they had their own wedding.
Yeah, we did. We actually did. We got married long before we tried working together. So we sort of made sure that was solid first before we added any more stressors.
So when did you start writing for the theater? Or when did you even think that was something you wanted to do?
So in 2009, we were married and we never saw each other between day jobs and night jobs. We were trying desperately to make it and make money. And so we decided to do a Toronto Fringe Festival show. We decided to write a musical together, mainly so we could spend the summer together and see each other. And it went really well. It took off. The merchants in Toronto picked it up, and we had to quit our day jobs, and suddenly we were musical theater writers, and now we spend every single day together. It was very rare today that we were apart for like an hour, and we were like, what did you do? That was very weird.
So tell me about, like, what were those first few moments of writing together like? Were you nervous about, like, I'm writing with my life partner? I mean, Stephen Flaherty, Lynn Ahrens were on this podcast and said, oh, collaborating on a musical, it's like being married to your collaborator.
It's just like that for us, too.
Was it? I'm so fascinated by this, maybe because I wonder what working with my wife would be like. But were you nervous that it would be difficult, that you taking it to the dinner table afterwards?
I think so. I was anyway. I know it was mostly David's idea to start writing. And what happened was he wrote the first script for My Mother's Lesbian Jewish Wiccan Wedding. And I read it and I was like, okay, let me look at this and let me play with it. And, it's good. It's good. And then we ran into a friend of ours who said, what I'm so excited about this show is that it's a true story. It's actually about David's mom. And then I went back to the script and went, but we fictionalized everything. Like it was basically Drowsy Chaperone, but like mix up mayhem and a gay wedding for real. So I was like, David, we got to throw this whole thing out. We've got to throw the whole thing out. And it was almost done. Like we just got to throw it out and start over. And yeah, I don't think you were too happy with me at that moment, but then he just started revenge writing and it ended up being good.
Yeah, I was like, this totally doesn't work. See, we're going to put our real life down on paper. I like this. We should look at this.
So this is we have a lot of writers that listen to the podcast. And I think one of the most difficult things that collaborators have to do is tell their partner that this isn't good. This isn't working or not up to what you can do, which I feel like if you guys are the best case for this because it's even harder when you have to go to bed together at night. So what tips do you have out there for the other people working in collaborations to say, hey, you can do better than this?
So we have a lot of rules.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about the show when we're hungry or tired or angry, which doesn't always leave a lot of time left over at the end of the day. But basically, I mean, there's similar things to being married in that you're trying to avoid arguments, right? We try not to talk about the show in generalities or something that we've written like, I don't like it. We try to be really specific about it. And one of the things that Irene learned at school when she got her master's in acting, one of her professors said, before they started the scene, he said, what are you trying to do and how did it go?
And then afterwards how did it go? Yeah.
Right. So we have so when we first start out putting anything on paper, we send it to each other and we say, here's what I was trying to do and here's how I think it went. It saves so many arguments because you go into it instead of just saying, hey, I wrote something. What do you think? And the other person has no idea whether you like it, whether you hate it, whether you think it's the best thing in the world. Instead, it forces you to take a pause and step back and say, what was I trying to do? Did this work? And then you actually send it to them and say, I hate this completely, but I do like this one word. And that's a very different thing from I love everything except this one word, right? So, and then it makes the other person take a step back and say, what do I think about this? There's something really good about not just leaping into saying something in a marriage and in a partnership, and that's really helped us.
I love this angry, tired, or hungry rule. Only because I literally was in London with my wife over the weekend, and we made a rule whenever she was hungry that she should just eat and not wait for me ever.
Yeah.
So these rules are great. You should write a book on actually relationships as well as
right.
the next show.
It is hard though, like trying to keep it out of if the day went bad, it like we're lying in bed still talking about the show. It's hard to divide your time between married co-writers. But at the end of the day, it's something really wonderful about working with someone who loves you and who loves you and who you trust implicitly and who you're focused together on the same goals in life. And so there's nothing behind it, what they're saying. They're literally trying to make you as successful as possible to make the best project possible. And at the end of the day, you go to bed and they love you. It's amazing.
So what you were an actor before studying acting, and then you were a songwriter before primarily. And you both transitioned, which is what I also love about the story. So what gave you the courage to think that, I'm just now going to write. I can just do this now?
I guess because it was the Toronto Fringe Festival, and I've seen a lot of Fringe shows, and I've seen some very, very good ones. Drowsy Chaperone, Toronto Fringe, Kink in My Hair came out of the Fringe, but I've seen other shows at the Fringe. And so there seemed to be a lot of room to sort of just get out there and make mistakes and just figure out what our voices were. And honestly, it wasn't something that I necessarily knew that I was good at least. So I didn't really have high expectations, if that makes sense. It wasn't like, it's going to devastate me if I get, bad reviews on my writing. It's like, So there's a little bit of a freedom to just going in and just saying things the way I wanted to stay instead of trying to sound like somebody.
She has a creative writing degree. She studied writing, and I've taken a screenwriting course once.
No, I didn't get good grades. That's the thing.
Screenwriting. That's why. Right?
Well, we actually we realized that we first collaborated in her last year at school when I had just graduated the year before, and I was hanging out at her res room giving her bad grades, and and she was doing a psych degree and a creative writing degree, and she had to get her thesis in, and so I was trying desperately to help edit, and we looked back and we were like, that was our first collaboration.
And do you think you'll write another musical together? Or you started already on something?
Yeah, we have. And we are desperately just trying to find time to do that. We also have a daughter who's about to turn 4. And we just moved to the city, and we are desperately trying to be like, what does our life look like now? How do we right now in this new city with these? I mean, it's all new to us. Like even when we started our first show, Molly wasn't born yet, so we had all the time in the world. We could start at 4 p.m. and go in the 4 a.m. and then sleep till 3 p.m. It was fine. And now, no, she's got to get up. She's got to get to school. We got to feed her. We got to pick her. So we're figuring it out.
Yeah. It's also it's a good champagne problem to have that Comfort Way still keeps us really busy.
Yes, that's true.
And then there's a lot of new projects, coming from there that we're excited about that we don't have time for. But yeah, we would love more time, and we've got a bunch of new things that we're really excited about.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because Lesbian Wiccan Wedding, Come From Away, which even your producers on this podcast said, everyone calls it the 9/11 musical. So these are interesting subjects for musicals. What draws you to something and says, ooh, yeah, I want to write that for the musical stage?
I think like when we first started My Mother's Lesbian Jewish Wiccan Wedding, I had written a song called My Mother's Lesbian Jewish Wiccan Wedding, and I was touring as a singer-songwriter, and the whole humor of the piece was just that I said the words My Mother's Lesbian Jewish Wiccan Wedding over and over again. But what happened is I started telling the story, and initially we thought, this is just a story about my family. But it turned out that people were really interested, and they were like, no, that's really strange, and you should turn that into a show. So I think part of it is stories that we have fallen in love with along the way, that we sort of get to know. The Newfoundland story was something that inspired us, and then we found even more inspiration by going out to Newfoundland and meeting all of the people who had returned for the 10th anniversary. Who, every single story was better than the last one, and it was something that we wanted to. Every story we were like, I can't wait to tell that to someone. And the music behind that was music that I loved, that I had never seen on a Broadway stage, that I thought would be really fun to combine in a musical theater perspective. And so there's something about the true stories that we've fallen in love with that we can't wait to share with people. That's what's currently, inspired us. And at the same time, we're like, this is our second musical, so we're open to lots of things.
I think for me, I'm drawn to extraordinary stories about love, like about people doing things that are unusual out of kindness or out of love. Like David's mother's story is about her and her partner meeting and falling in love and then raising David as they sort of negotiate their Wiccan and Jewish faiths. And Come From Away is about people who didn't have to take people off of planes that they didn't know, and not only take them into their town, but take them into their homes. So I just like sort of like, like staggering acts of being nice. And it's not just nice. It's not nice because it's also really brave. Both stories, the people in them are very, very brave and really intelligent. Yeah, and strong.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how the kindness in Come From Away is what we normally end up talking about, and the generosity. But the fact that the people brought them off the planes, invited them into their homes, they didn't need to. They could have left them cooped up there. They could have kept them separate, and instead they invited them into their lives. And what could have been 7,000 people scared and angry and divided became 7,000 friends and family members. And something really smart and as policy, that's a really amazing thing to celebrate and share. I think we always look, maybe it's because we're performers as well, but we look for, parts with a lot of diversity that, we always want to write for young and old people and people from all backgrounds. And we want to share stories that we're excited about all over the place.
So go back in time a little bit. You make a decision. Okay, we're going to write this musical called Come From Away about what it's about. What's the very first thing you did? Like, you're staring at a blank screen, you got a guitar, a piano, whatever. What's the first thing you did for this musical?
The thing that we always I think we start with research and talking, and that leads us so far down. Come From Away started with what's the story, and then we did a lot of research on the internet. We reached out and phoned people. We watched documentaries. We read books. We read forums online of people who had been there, and then we also went on. This was before we had a daughter, so we went on long walks and long car drives where we would just and talk about what it could be and how we were inspired by the Laramie Project. And one of the great things was we applied for a grant, and in applying for a grant, we actually identified the people we wanted to talk to, the stories we thought might be interesting, the places we thought we needed to go to do our research, and then just dove in and came back with a million pieces of paper and a million stories, and so that's the first thing that really starts us off is this long period of research and really diving in and talking.
Yeah.
Now you're developing this musical, and it's affectionately referred to at times as the 9/11 musical. I'm sure many times along the way you had people like, you're doing a musical about what? How do you deal with any naysayers along the way about subject matter or what you're pursuing? Were you faced with that along this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. We quickly discovered it was more of a 9/12 musical than a 9/11 musical. It was about what happened in response to this event. And, when we're getting to a time where a lot of people who end up in our audiences weren't even alive at the time, or they were of 9/11, or they were 3-4 years old. And it's like they say at the 9/11 Museum, it's where memory is starting to meet history. And we're on the same street as Bandstand, which is Second World War. Great Comet. It's not about a tragedy, but it's also about a time in the past
set against the backdrop of a war.
But set against, this is true. That's right, of course. Amelie, was a moment. There's something triggered by the Diana car crash. There comes a time where we write stories about our history, and this is sort of a sideways angle at it that is something that happened in response to this terrible event. And and it's when we don't focus on that. We right from the moment you walk into the theater, you see the trees, you see the wood, you see the blue, and you're like, oh, I'm going to be safe here. This isn't anything I don't want to see.
Yeah, we say come to Newfoundland. This is a story about what happened in Newfoundland. And that was important to us. It's been important to our director, it's our producers, everyone, because we were here on 9/11. My cousin was in the towers, but fortunately got out. And we didn't want to tell that story. And at the same time, when we went out to Newfoundland, we realized there was so much about what happened out there that resonated with us. We were living in New York at a residence for international graduate students. So we were in this community of people from 110 countries from from around the world, all taking care of each other, supporting each other through music. There was a lot of musicians who would pull out a piano and start playing, and that brought us together as a community. And also just what happened in New York, the kindness that we saw on the street. I remember you could reach out to anyone at any time and say, "Are you okay? How are you doing?" There was candlelight vigils where strangers would come together, and at the same time we were all putting on theater. We were working on shows at the time, and we didn't expect anyone to come 3 days after 9/11, and instead they were packed. And I think it was because we all wanted that community. We all wanted to come together and have a shared experience and recognize that we are all in this. And that's one of the things that we've learned about Come From Away is this isn't necessarily a Canadian story. It's not just an American story. This is a universal story that people from all over the world have related to in some way because we were all going through the same thing at the same time. And there's been something interesting about we're very careful about the language that we use. We don't say the words World Trade Center until the very end of the show, and we're very cautious with that. What's been interesting is the kids who weren't alive when 9/11 happened come to the show, and there's even though it's very specifically set in Newfoundland and very specifically set on those days, it becomes a piece about how we can react in any tragedy, how we can react to any event, and hopefully how we can react on any day.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you talk about the stories born out of love, and that's what I took away from the show. Certainly, I could never imagine so much joy could come from such an experience, and I was here as well, and I just credit that so to you guys. There's so much love and joy in that musical, and it's impressive, incredibly impressive.
Thank you.
Did you ever think when you were writing it, like, Broadway musical someday, we'll be at the Tony Awards, we'll pick up the drama desk?
No. This is us shaking our heads really loudly. No, we thought we had a slam dunk with Canadian high schools and colleges because there was a little known town in Canada that was mentioned, and I didn't think we'd ever perform at all in the States, especially having lived here at one point. We were like, this is probably not transferable. So every step of the way, we've just been like, okay, let's do this workshop at Goodspeed with students. Okay, let's go to the NAMT festival. Now we're going to La Jolla. Oh, okay. It's been amazing. It's been amazing.
I do think you will have a slam dunk with Canadian high schools eventually, if they ever get a chance to perform, because it's going to run here a very, very long time.
We can't wait, actually. The whole creative team has agreed that, the first high school production in Newfoundland, we were all flying out to see. We want to see, 60 kids all playing trees
and cats
rocks
and the holes. Yeah.
Will either of you ever perform in the show?
That'd be
anywhere?
So fun. Yeah, it would be so fun.
David Malloy's doing it down the block, right, a little bit. You could do it at some high school somewhere.
Absolutely. The high school that I'm teaching at.
I will play a tree.
Yeah.
So you talk a little bit about the developmental process. You had a number of out-of-town tryouts, if you will, right? Talk to me about that process. How much did the show change from when you went for the first major stop to where you landed on Broadway?
It feels like it's changed a million different ways, and yet it's still the same show. The style of the show is still very similar, but there's been some pretty big shifts. Sue and Randy, who were here, actually said to us, we used to have an intermission, and they said this was an experience that everyone went through in one chunk. There wasn't a period where everyone could step back and have a drink and go to the washroom and say, "You think it's going? Do you want to leave?" So we took that out, which cut everything down even more. Chris Ash, brilliant at challenging us to, raise the tensions, find the connections, streamline it smoothly. There's been a million questions he has asked us, and it feels like we've challenged every single word of the script. There's some characters who we hadn't interviewed when we started at the beginning. So there's a mother of a firefighter in Gander who befriends mother of a firefighter in New York, and we'd only met Beulah in Gander, but we hadn't met Hannah here. So along the way, we met her and interviewed her, and that gave us permission to write a song for her when we first came into New York.
Who do you think you learned the most from on the road to Broadway? From Chris, from your director, from your audiences, or from the reviewers?
Oh my gosh. I think for me, it was really young people in the audience. Theater was such an obsession of mine when I was a kid, and I love to get feedback from young people, and I really sort of take it to heart because they're also the harshest critics. And I never expect them to like the show, and I'm always so glad when they do. But I loved when they told us at one point that it moved at a pace that they were used to, and I was like, okay, keep that in my head. And if they don't get something that's happening on stage, it probably means it's not quite clear enough. And we would go back and look at it again, because again, a lot of these people, the kids weren't alive at the time. Like I remember at one point someone asked, like, why didn't she just use her cell phone on the plane? And I was like, okay, so we really need to go back and say, and remind everybody that, that it wasn't, everyone did not carry a cell phone, especially if you're going to Europe. You didn't bring your cell phone, a few people might have, but so many stories we got, they're just like, cell phone ran out of battery. And I was like, where was everyone's chargers? We all work with chargers, but it just wasn't a thing.
Yeah. I think we've learned from everyone. I mean, Chris in particular has been amazing, and right up until the very, until opening on Broadway, he was still challenging us on things, but also Kelly Devine and Ian Eisendrath, that 5-person team, and with Sue and Randy and Kenny and Marlene of Junkyard Dog, have become this creative unit that we've spent so many times just hashing things out and pushing things around and trying things differently. But even our actors asking us questions, and our design team suggesting something. And then I remember being at the Royal Alex in Toronto, and we were coming to see the show over and over again, and I realized the ushers are watching the same show over and over again, and they're all theater people, and I bet they have some pretty. And so I went around and I said, do you guys, like, what drives you crazy about the show? Like, what's one thing you would fix? And a lot of them had something that, like a really smart note that, and a couple of them got integrated into the show. And then the people that we actually interviewed would come to the show. Beverly Bass has been now 70 times to the show. Her husband Tom recently, right before we opened, gave us a note. He's like,
no, I think it was after we opened.
Oh yeah, it might have been. He said, I think I noticed something, and we were like, oh, you're right. And we actually were like, can we change that? And we changed it was like one small word. And Beverly noted something in her song about how you mixed up the order of when you get your flight training and when you take your first flight or something. So we got notes from them. In general, we've tried to be open to everything, and at the same time take the note and step back and say, are they giving us a solution, or are they telling us where a problem is, so we have to fix it? And we've tried to go back to what we were originally trying to do, but listen to everyone at the same time.
That was my next question, because look, I've just met you, but you seem like such nice people.
Thanks.
That you're Canadian. All
too.
Canadians are nice. So, and also this is new for you, right? So this is your first big Broadway show. You're Canadian and nice. So your first instinct is probably whatever anyone tells us to do, we're just going to do, because we're like guests at this giant party. You've got incredibly nice producers as well, but they've got Tony on their shelf, for Memphis and things. How do you say, you know what? No, I don't care. We may be new to this party, but this is the story we want to tell. Because in the theater, the writers are the ones that have that ultimate say, right?
Yeah. Well, and that came as a surprise to me sometime in La Jolla. Like, I think Chris had to say to me, like, if you don't want to do this, if you don't like this, then you can say no. I'm like, I can? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to get fired. And he's like, fired from your show? Like, he was just like, he didn't make fun of me. Now he might, because he knows me better. But he was just like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. You're not getting fired. And I'm like, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, I don't like it. I don't want to do that number that we just spent all day on.
Yeah, because when we were in La Jolla, we actually we rewrote the opening number of the show and staged it and designed it and had it lit and choreographed and everything. And we were all looking at it being like, no, maybe. And Chris came over to us and said, well, why don't we just put it in tonight? And we had been agonizing about it, and Irene was like, I don't want to put it in.
Yeah.
Let's not put it in. And we went back. But by going on that journey, we actually found a better way and then combined it with something else. So that's been the story for us, as collaborators as well. But in terms of working with everyone, is that, it might not be Irene's A, it might not be my B, but we always find, like, the working through that, we always come up with something better with a C.
What you just described is one of the assets and liabilities of theater is it's a collaborative art form, right? So we get all these great people to think about, but you can fall into this group think of like 20 people staring at something and no one wants to say this isn't working. And so you have to stand up and say, no, this is not going to work. This is my baby and I'm not going to allow it to happen. So good for you, because I've certainly seen a lot of shows on stages here in New York where I've been like, did no one see what is happening on the stage right now? Talk to me a little bit about those actors as well. So you have an incredible cast, Chad and Jen and Rodney and all these people. Did you expect the changes or the input that you get from cast members along the way? Did Did you write something like, oh, this is going to come out a certain way, I know how this is going to be, and then the actor brought something totally different that scared you at first or take you in any new directions as a writer?
There's been, I mean, the actors talk about it because so much of the show is at least inspired by verbatim text, even though we've changed it significantly. But it comes from real people who we have a really clear vision in our head. To say nothing of the the student workshops that we've been through. So there's a lot of past lives in our head when we look at the lines on the page. But Chris really gave the cast sort of carte blanche to create their own characters from the page rather than trying to do doppelgangers or trying to copy something that we had researched. And what they always say is how surprising they are to come face to face with the real people and realize they're playing them regardless. So that's been interesting for us, is to sort of test what they're playing against our own memories of it and decide what's theatrical and what isn't. But they've all asked questions along the way, and that's and then there's been a million. We have so many characters that we're trying to tell all at once that we've along the way we've been like, oh, you're talking to yourself in this scene because you're playing 3 characters, and now we have so we have to work that out. But they've also helped us make things work. I remember there was a moment in La Jolla when Trina Bromley, who plays Bonnie, there was a moment when Chad had to switch characters really quickly.
Like he's standing stage center, and the next scene he's supposed to be somebody else. And there was this moment where you could sense in the room we were about to get sent away
to do rewrites, and we were like, we've messed this up. And Patrina said, "What if I just take off his jacket?" She just pulls his jacket off, and everyone in the room was like, oh, and you could see the entire cast go, oh, that's what this show is going to be. The show is going to be, there's certain moments when we're the stars, and there's other moments when we're the dressers, we're the people who are ripping off the jackets, and suddenly
handing a prop
and hiding a prop and moving a chair, and suddenly it became this collaborative thing, and we really discovered how theatrical it can be. You literally can just change a character by pulling a jacket off really quickly, and suddenly the audience is like, well, that's Garth. No, him, he doesn't wear the jacket, and you don't have to do anything, and that saved us some rewrites.
What I love about that concept too is it, for me, is the metaphor for the entire piece. I mean, it's people helping people along the way tell this story and just get through life. And that's what I just loved about it. I was like just amazed, just like them helping them get Pampers or whatever they're getting. They're helping them with a jacket. They're helping them with a prop. It's incredible how that just carries through the entire piece.
Chris actually said at one point it was hard to give notes because he would say so you missed this, this, and this, and this. And then someone would say, oh, that was my bad because I did this or whatever. She is usually right on that. And someone else would be like, yeah, she does a great job. I don't know what happened there. It was probably because I was looking at my phone 10 minutes ago and I distracted, and he was just like, I don't care. Let's just, this is the note.
So it's become, I mean, part of it is it's practically the same cast from La Jolla through Seattle, through Washington, to Gander itself, back to Toronto and here. So it's become this amazing family that's really supportive. And the swings talk about this when they go on stage, that there's this safety net of love and support and shove with love. But, they know the show so well and know each other so well that it's this incredible magic trick that they're all doing together. It's amazing for us to watch, even though we've seen it a million times.
What was the biggest surprise for you for coming to Broadway? It's something you didn't expect. I didn't know I'd have to do podcasts with this Ken Davenport guy.
No, that's cool. We get to do this. We have your articles in book form on our bookshelf.
Exactly.
Really cool.
I'm trying to think. The biggest surprise. You mean the biggest surprise today? The biggest surprise.
It feels like literally, Irene mentioned this earlier, but every step of the way has been sort of a live in the moment, because we've been surprised that we got into NAMT. We were surprised that we got to La Jolla. We were surprised that we went to Washington, and that we could bring a Broadway show to Gander, Newfoundland. So just getting to Broadway was like, oh my God, it really happened. And then we opened, and we're a critic's pick, and then 3 days later, the Prime Minister of Canada shows up, right? So every step of the way has been a big surprise, and it's hard to pick one because it's been pretty amazing.
It's so small backstage. I think that was the thing I wasn't expecting the most. I was just like, there is nowhere to be. Okay. Oh, not here either. Wow. Okay, I guess I'll be across the street at Starbucks, except for there's no room there either. There's just no room. It's crazy.
The stagehands are usually so nice, though, about making room for you back there.
Our office is in the bathroom of the stage management office. We sort of sit next to them on the toilet and type.
Yeah, that's charming.
I'm also surprised at how small a community it is.
Yes.
You walk down the street here and you see so many people. Suddenly half of the people walking past you, and it's really amazing. And it's it sort of reinforces how important it is to try to be nice and try to be part of this community and try to work within that, because you're going to work with everyone. Like, you just look at our block right now. Jen Colella is part of the record. Jen Colella and Tony Lepage are one of our swings.
And Tamika, I'm sure,
are in the digital recording, and dear Evan Hansen that's playing. Nick Choksky, who's in Great Comet, was in one of our workshops at NAMP. There's the interconnection.
And that's just us, and we don't know anybody here.
Right. Yeah.
I do think, if Broadway was a university, like, this 10-block radius would be its campus. It's like you're strolling across the quad and you see people.
Totally.
From 6:30 to 7:30, you just see so many people with their backpacks and on their way to work.
Right. It's all of us wishing we could go back to college.
It's Avenue Q.
Yeah.
Yep.
Biggest advice you would have to a songwriting team out there and creators out there that, like, I want to get to where these guys are right now?
I would say don't be afraid of day jobs. I think in this day and age, they no longer say you'll have 7 different jobs before you retire. You'll have 7 different careers. I've been a teacher. I've been a standardized patient. I've worked at, Canada's Wonderland as Fred Flintstone. I've done so many different things. And I've had to say no to a lot of opportunities for advancement within different things. I mean, David was the manager of a marketing department at an insurance company, but that gave us the money to put on said fringe show and the color printer. Yeah. Anyway, so I would say, it's a different world than the one that they talk about before about not having a plan B. Like, I feel like the plan B can save you. And I think it keeps you in touch with who eventually is going to be your audience and the things that concern them and the things they want to see. And so don't hold yourself up and live off your parents' trust fund if you have that type of thing, which we did not. But, it's okay to be out there and learning things.
The thing that I think about a lot is like, and I remember when we first started working with Junkyard Dog and Chris, there's some advice that we read in a book about how you should approach it like a relationship, and that you're going to be married to these people and you're going to be working with them for years to come. And we've just got into Broadway. We've been working with them for 3 years now. We've known them longer than that. We're going to be working with them for years to come. They have raised our daughter, just as much as we have practically, and carried her around and taught her things. We're married to each other, and also we're married to our material. Like the fact that we started this based on a story that we loved rather than we thought a story that would be commercially successful, or and it's based on people we interviewed who have become our friends, who have now become insanely good friends, and who we keep in touch with constantly. There's a sense of, I'm happy that we started this based on us loving each other and wanting to spend more time together, and us wanting to spend more time with Junkyard Dog. I remember our first conversation with them. One of the things that meant a lot to us is how much we laughed on the phone. We were talking about them producing the show, and we got off and we were like, we laughed a lot on that phone call, and that means a lot, and we've laughed a lot since then. And Chris, one of the first things he did was say, I want to go out to Newfoundland, and we went out there and he helped us put together the car seat in the back of the car, and he's like held Molly and has learned a lot about kids and along the way, and it's been like a marriage the entire way. And so there's something about starting it with love that is, I think for us at least, turned into something that we didn't ever expect, but it's amazing. Yeah,
we obviously don't thrive much on we surround ourselves with nice people because that's probably
life's too short.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, Randy is probably one of the best laughs around. So
there you go.
Right? Find yourself a producer who will stand at the back of the house every show and laugh like crazy. It's amazing.
And your day job comment is a great one. I remember when Urinetown years ago went to Broadway, one of the authors, I forget which one, kept his day job, I think, while the show was leading up to previews, because he's like, I just don't know what's going to happen here, so it's going to keep me sane.
Yeah, it's true.
Shonda Rhimes did that with...
No, she didn't. We're getting mixed up.
It was the actress in Grey's Anatomy. Someone was acting in Grey's Anatomy and was like, keeping my day job. I don't know how this is going to go.
I need to Google that Fred Flintstone photos if they're anywhere.
There probably are.
You guys started off by saying how busy you have to be and plan your lives now. Any productivity tips or hacks? This is like a new part of the podcast where I'm trying to get to like, what keeps super busy, successful, productive people like yourself sane every day? Do you keep lists? Do you use certain apps?
So we just started using more apps. We have a new one called Onward, which literally helps us track how much we're looking at Twitter and Facebook online, and helps you move forward. We've got a to-do list called Todoist that we use. That's our app program. But also, I find like it's the same thing as Gander. It's like finding a village of people that's going to help you make this happen, and realize that you do need help. There's just too much in the day, and we need someone to watch our daughter sometimes, and we need someone to help us arrange when to come to podcasts, and you need support, and everyone needs support, and it can be back and forth, but we've found that relying on people has helped us be more productive.
Yeah. And the thing and I've done both these things, the thing about putting up a show that is harder than having a newborn baby is that when you're putting up a show, no one shows up with a lasagna and says, I'll do your laundry and wash your floor and why don't you go have a nap? That would be really nice. If people's parents or neighbors could act like putting up a show is like giving birth to a baby and come over and just, walk your dog, whatever it is, because I remember we were doing the show and having Molly at the same time, and suddenly all these people showed up doing things for us, and I was like, I'm just going to keep giving them stuff to do and be like, I'm so overwhelmed. There's the lawnmower.
So everyone go out there, have kids. If you're producing
worst idea ever. No. Yeah.
Okay. What Onward is the name of it? It literally tracks how many hours a day or minutes or decades you're spending on Twitter and Facebook. Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, my last question, which is my infamous genie question. This is going to be a tough one for you guys because you're way too nice. I want you to imagine that the genie from Aladdin pays you a visit. Mm-hmm. And thanks you for putting a spotlight on Gander and producing this musical that's brought such joy to a moment in our history that was so tragic. And the genie says, I'm going to grant you one wish. What's the one thing about Broadway that gets you so mad, that gets you frustrated, irritated, that would make you want to flip this table over and leave it and never come back, that you would ask this genie to wish away in an instant?
I do. I'm working with our babysitter is a young actress, and I was just talking to her today about casting and how hard it is to be seen. And I remember myself standing in the non-equity open call lineup, and I just wish, I don't know what it is. So Jeannie, how do you make sure everyone actually gets an equal shot? And bring more jobs so that, that they can actually have something to act in. Because I just feel like it, sometimes if you're lucky right out of the gate, suddenly you have all of these people on your side that keep pushing for you, and that's great. But then someone who wasn't as lucky out of the gate, but who was just as talented gets left behind. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating, especially now that I've been on the other side of the table and I can say like, wait, what, how, why? Okay, everyone has been here longer than me, so I'll get a step back. Yeah.
Piggyback on that. Our cast, we were really proud, just got an Equity Diversity Award, which we're thrilled about. And it was interesting. We went out with all the writers right before the Tonys and had drinks together, and that was wonderful. And it was 8 guys at a table with Irene on one side. And we have a lot of director friends who are female director friends who are trying to work their way up. And it was talking to Kelly Devine, our choreographer, about being one of the few female choreographers. I would like the genie to make things equitable on Broadway, because I think that would just make art better and would raise the level on a million different things. And I think that, what's great is that everyone's working towards that. It's just, I'd like it to happen faster.
Both very good wishes for sure. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for writing a glorious musical for us all to enjoy. Thanks to all of you for listening. We will see you next time. Don't miss out on that big announcement we've got coming up. Go to theproducersperspective.com and subscribe today.